and gentlemen, welcome to Rebels Flux. My name is Chris Netto, and today I have a very special treat for you. We are going shopping. Yes, you've heard that here first. It's going to be a podcast first. We're going to take Rebels Flux and we're going to go into the retail world and figure out what it is we want to put inside our very eco-friendly bags and walk out with. And in no person I would rather go shopping with than the man, the myth, the legend of the retail experience world, Mr. Manolo Almagro. How are you, sir?
That was like the best intro I've ever had. I'm humbled.
So now we got to go shopping.
Let's do it. Where are we going shopping first?
So part of the reason why I introduced you as this grandmaster of shopping economics and stuff like that is that you spent your career doing a lot of experiential stuff, but your focus and most of your, the second half of your career has been really focused on the retail world or the retail experience. Why don't you start by introducing who you are, the company you're at, and why I just went down why am I taking you to Sears with
me? So my name is Manolo Almagro. I'm the managing partner for Q Division. Q Division is a part of the StrataCash family of companies. What does that mean? We don't necessarily, we're an independent consultancy for them, but we are also tied to them from the standpoint of the ventures group is what is behind who we are. So a lot of times people call me in and I have to explain the difference, because we'll go in and we'll talk about different types of technologies. And if they get into digital signage, which isn't always the case, we will bring up other competitors as well as StrataCash just to show how we're unbiased. Because that's really what we do, is we help people find the best technology for what they're looking for.
It's not necessarily the content, but you are actually the physical hardware person who is putting together or thinking of the better ways for the interaction or that retail experience to interact. I think a lot of times when people think of retail, they'll quickly go, oh, it's just TVs, and then we have to get a cool, graphic designer with a massive beard to put up some cool pictures.
and don't forget the gauge earrings. They'll need that too. So.
Absolutely. So, tell us about what sort of technology is that? Like, where is Q Division looking? Correct me if I'm wrong, but a big piece of what you're doing is in everybody's pocket or purse, is taking a look, obviously, at the mobile side and how that's interacting with the physical environment of the offices or the retail spaces.
Yep. Well, I think a lot of it has to do with machine vision. Like, that has been a driving force in the past, I'd say, 7 months. A lot of it has to be attributed to the cashierless checkout that everybody wants so badly, but then when they figure out how much it costs and what it means, it changes their approach. There's a lot of interesting stuff happening in social commerce and how to take that experience and make it part of the in-store experience. A lot of times there's this snap-on approach where people will be like, oh, let's just throw up Instagram on the screen or some sort of feed, and that's not the way to do it. So we look at more of the customer journey, the behaviors that we can support, and then we turn that into, here's an experience that can exploit the fact that people use this device as part of their shopping approach, right? Mm-hmm. I think we also, we do work in retail, but part of what we also do is we work in airports, QSR, and all these other areas too. And so what is nice about that is we get to look at other industries and do cross-industry innovation, which means we look at how they've solved a problem in one area and apply it to another. Perfect example is what happens. Airports are using a lot of what Amazon Go has been doing. They're using facial recognition to check you in. They're letting that experience become part of the entire travel experience. So imagine that you check in with your face, so we know who you are, we know why you're there. And now that suddenly you are now exposed to all of the different retail stores that are inside the terminal, which why should you have to take your wallet out or everything else? Because I already know who you are. You gave me your passport when you walked in. So suddenly I have this seamless shopping experience that I can also apply in the airport space. So a lot of that, yeah.
Wait a minute. So you're saying that the whole reason that airports are turning into shopping malls is by design?
Surprise, surprise. Actually, I'll tell you what I really think it is. It's a giant database for the big man to look and see who we are and track everything we make. But that's just me. That's
No.
my feeling.
Okay, all right. If you're going to go ahead and just waiting for you to pull the hood off and enact
That's right.
Order 66. I mean, what kind of weird?
Yeah, that's exactly what that is.
I know. Hey, I see what you're going. And for people that need to know, it'll pop up on the lower third what I meant by that. So the shopping experience that is now the airports. You're right. I do get that. Does that tie into how are you taking it from the airport to other spaces, right? Obviously, you start treading down that weird kind of conversation of privacy. Now, granted, in the airport, it's all about security, right?
Yes.
They want to know who's there on purpose, and that is in your face, and that's expected. But when you're walking into the Freehold Township Mall, as I do, the last thing I need to know is that my face is being tracked. Where does that get very sketchy?
That is very true. So I would say the context of travel is much different than the mall, because you have to get into the terminal by showing some sort of official ID and proving that's you. So totally different. But once you're in there, that's when we use this frictionless, cashierless experience, which everybody loves so much. When you're talking about the mall's a little bit different, but there's a recent study in eMarketer that talks about how people, I think it was this month, how people will opt in and trade a lot of their private information if you give them an appropriate equal response in promotions and customization. So it doesn't say, I'll let you copy my face and know it's me every time. It says, if I get the value of it that is equal the amount of privacy that I feel that I gave up, then I'm cool with it. And it's showing that continues to grow. I mean, you and I are of a different era. Perhaps we are the older millennial generation, maybe even a little higher. I don't want to go. I don't want to ask you how old you are, right?
Yeah. Let's not go by our hair.
This is a fashion discussion, but but I think if you look at how the generations have, of course, appreciated the fact that they are getting more and more customized experiences in everything else that they do, that expectation is now part of their daily life. So everything else, sure, I'll give you a little bit of my private information, but you better be sure that you talk to me in a way that I find appropriate. And that's the balance you always have to strike. Doing things like, working with in-store analytics, tracking people on a passive level, people are okay with that. Number one, if you tell them what you're doing, the information. Number two, you're also getting that level of personalization that they say, oh, cool. Yeah, that's okay. I'm all right with that because it was something that made me feel like you thought about in a thoughtful way. You thought about me when you did that. So, and I think it's only going to continue to grow, right? The more stuff that we give out and the appropriateness of the promotion or the customization of the concierge level of service, people will continue to give up their personal information.
Do you think we're ever going to get to the level of the, growing up in our era? Are we ever going to get to the level of like corner store, where you're giving up the information in order to, I'm going to walk into your store, and as soon as I walk in, you know who I am, right? You used to have that in the corner store. You used to go there, get a slice of pizza, Mr. Henry that worked behind the counter knew who you were. He knew who your parents were. It was kind of like, hey, you're short 10 cents, go home, get it, bring it back, whatever the case was. Do you think that we're getting to that level of proximity? I don't know if that's proximity is the right word, but are we getting to that level of comfort with sharing data, giving up the data in order to have that type of warm and fuzzy?
Yes, I think that because, I'll drop some names. So we have a product called Lockbase that we use. And if you tie that into a loyalty program, which you've already opted into, loyalty program says, I will give you access to my privacy information, what I shop for, my behavior, in exchange for some sort of benefit. The benefit is better prices, early access, things like that. And so you tie that in, you're already giving them a certain level of access. So what you're now doing is exposing them to what you're doing when they're inside the store, right? So we can capitalize on behavior of knowing where they stand, how often they stand there, how often they visit. And then you get into all of the behavioral stuff about their purchasing side, which is what you would get through the loyalty program anyway.
Mhm.
So I do think that it is now an expectation that you should have a certain level of understanding of who I am when I walk into a store. If you're going to talk to me, if you're going to approach me with some sort of deal or promotion, I
Mhm.
expect you to know enough that that promotion you're giving me makes sense. Otherwise, I'll be like, why are you sending me stuff on, toiletries or feminine products? I'm a man. I don't interested in that.
Yeah.
That's how it would go. Right. That's all it is.
It's funny because you're a very personable person. You talk very much like, hey man, you're gonna come into the store and we're gonna have this. This is all nerd stuff in the background. This is all data. That's essentially
Right.
what it is. These are
Exactly.
ones and zeros going in the back to make you very sci-fi weird crap right now that that's going through my head is that, where in order for you to be for somebody to be friendly, kind of weird, but in order for somebody to be friendly, you got to pass your data, and somebody's got to analyze it and
That's
go,
right.
God, did I just have a light bulb moment? I wish I had a graphic that would pop over my head. You never know. Maybe a light bulb moment. Awesome, man. So it is down to the data. It's giving up the privacy to get that kind of closeness.
Yeah.
Can you share with us what's a great example of, the frictionless customer right now that is happening today? Because for a lot of people that may be watching this, that's interested in the retail side, this may be the first time they're hearing frictionless outside of maybe what they've read in The Verge or
Right.
hardly an Amazon store. What is the frictionless experience?
Well, I'll use a use case or a case study like direct to consumer brands. They're all over the place. Warby Parker, um, Casper, Allbirds, all of these guys. Now, you'll have to come with me on this little journey.
Okay.
These guys started online, and think about all the stuff they already collect. I mean, online shopping is the epitome of knowing everything I do when you're on somebody's site, right? They know what you looked at, if you put it in your cart, if you didn't buy it, but you left it in your cart, all of that stuff is gold to them. So these direct consumer brands already understand how to look at the first party data, which is the data they collect directly on you, and use it to create ways that you will convert to buying something. I'm saying it in a nice way, but in the end, it's a lot like, um, I wouldn't say manipulation. It is persuasion. That's the term marketers use. So as a marketer, you can talk to somebody in such a way that will make them buy something based on understanding their past history. So direct to consumer brands know how to do this. But the biggest challenge they have today is not the online, it's they need to expand to the offline world, which is why you see all of these direct to consumer companies exploding and opening 100, 200 locations. But what they're doing is understanding the customer upfront first and then applying that and building a physical experience based on what they learned with the online data, right? So this is a key piece of when you're creating, I wouldn't say frictionless, but a personalized experience based on, I know how exactly you search for that one product on my site. So I'm going to arrange my physical store the same way. So you don't even have to learn how to shop in there. You already know because you've been engaged with my brand. So these frictionless pieces come into play more from the standpoint of translating how your behavior works online and making it a physical manifestation. Does that make sense?
100% that makes sense.
Okay, cool.
And it's sort of basically just answer the question as to why some of the traditional brick and mortars that have been around for 100 or 50 or 20 years are having a tough time converting the other way because they
Yep.
never capture that data in beginning. So
Yep.
for those that are watching, yeah, that sucks. And you know what? That brings up a good conversation here because it was one of the conversations I had on a Sunday morning, and you got involved in it as well. And for most people that are going to be sitting here watching this video will probably relate to this conversation. But I want to hear your opinion. Why did Toys R Us fail?
I think it had more to do with not understanding how people's behaviors were changing, right? I mean, I still not sure the new version, let's say Toys R Us 2.0 that's coming out, is going to succeed because nothing's changed. They're basically, maybe they'll open smaller stores, maybe they'll create experiences, but they still had that in the store. But a lot of it was more, it was still these aisles and aisles of toys. There wasn't that much experiential. If you kind of unpack how people like to do things now, especially when it comes to kids and education, they like the kids to play with something, to experience it. Even online companies, the direct consumer that I mentioned earlier, there still needs to be a physical connection, which is another reason why they're opening the store, because people that connect with a brand online still want a way to connect in a physical sense. And that is another push on why they open these stores. Some of them are flagships, but in the end, it's about people still want this physical connection with an object when they're going to buy it. So I think, why did they fail? I think, of course, there was a lot of debt involved. I mean, there was more of a business reaction than the store design and the experience, but I also think that they didn't adapt quickly enough to these stores. I mean, if you've ever been to the Times Square store, that was a fun place to go, right?
Yes.
It was an awesome place to go. But if you think about how things evolved, you could go to these smaller toy stores that had the guy that understood what your kid was looking for, or you could talk to them. There was a more humanized approach versus this big box giant place.
Yeah.
So I really think that the reason why Toys R Us failed was A, they had a lot of debt behind them. They opened too many stores, but B, they didn't adapt, of course. They didn't adapt quickly enough to changing and allowing people to play more in the stores. Yeah. So maybe the new version will do that. It remains to be seen because, you can still buy everything on Amazon. There's nothing changed there.
No, and obviously for people that follow the story there, they gave away their online presence. They just thought that online presence was just another way to kind of just sell stuff to people who didn't want to come in, not connecting that or taking the data for that matter. They went basically to a fulfillment shop that just said, we'll take care of it.
Exactly.
And that
plus it's not convenient, right?
Yeah.
It was never convenient. Do you remember what the lines are like during Christmas at Toys R Us? Oh my God.
You know what though? It's messed up my after Thanksgiving. My Black Friday was always a fun trip. When me and my wife were when Black Friday was the Black Friday that of old, right? Because it's changed a lot. Now people are online shopping. There's people, stores opening up at 4:00 in the afternoon on Thanksgiving. But Black Friday used to be a fun event for me and my wife. We used to stop, grab a couple cups of coffee. We used to go sit on the trunk of our car and watch people fight over $10 vacuums. It was a sport, man. It was like you geared up, you geared up like some of them videos from the 90s of people in Chechnya fighting rebels. I mean, you had like car doors as shields. Like this was like some modern warfare guerrilla style shopping. And it was fun to sit and go, I can't believe the panic that these people are over. And meanwhile, when the store was completely gone, everybody was gone. The rush was over, doorbusters out. We'd stroll through and pick apart whatever was left. I mean, it was fine. I was there more to see what was going on. To me, it was always a big deal going, Thanksgiving, to see who were these poor people that are sleeping in a tent outside of a Best Buy. Like, what could be that important for you to sit there in the cold ass weather, right? I actually should have been selling. I should have been selling tacos back then. I should have. Taco truck movement happened too late, man. Completely.
You're like those guys that sell the umbrellas when it's raining outside the subway. That's what you're talking about.
Oh, that's exactly what I'm talking about. I grew up in this area, man. I grew up in the tri-state. You could make $20 on an umbrella on a bad day in New York City.
Yeah.
Selling a $2 umbrella. Anyway. Thank you for clarifying that, because that's a great example. The Toys R Us story is one that has been debated about. And I listened to a Gary Vee podcast on this topic as he's in a car explaining why his thoughts and why it went down. And it makes a lot of sense. And it really has to do with old mindset, right? It's very, very similar conversation to the, for lack of a better term, for lack of a better example, but it's a very similar conversation to Blockbuster with Netflix coming in. That is historical, written down in stone. That's like the story to tell about online versus brick and mortar. And yet 5, 10, 15 years later, that happened again.
Yep.
And nobody learned from it. It's a great story.
Yep.
And to see it happen again, it's sad because a lot of people lost their jobs, but it's a company that could have done something. On a
Right.
side
Well,
note,
yeah, go ahead.
on one side note, there is kind of a silver lining. The big Jeffrey the giraffe that was a symbol of Toys R Us actually made it to a children's hospital, right? When they
No
were
kidding.
liquidating. Oh yeah, they took one out of the headquarters, which was a massive Jeffrey the giraffe statue, and actually took it, and they wouldn't let it liquidate. They took it and put it at a children's hospital, I think in Morristown or Morris County, somewhere in New Jersey, I think has it, which is great. I'm glad that they
Awesome.
actually preserved that and went to do some good. All right, so now that we've gone through the shopping experience, and you would be interesting to walk through a mall with, because you would probably highlight all the weird things that are happening that I can't see with two eyes. So, so let's get into who Manolo is. But before I do go into the bizarro questions, I caught on to something, and I need you to verify if this is true or false. Q Division is an interesting name. My spies tell me that Q Division has more to do with your passion for movies. Am I correct in thinking? So tell me about what Q Division, the origin story of the Q Division.
Well,
Or the name.
I can't take the credit for it. I will give credit where credit is due. So I was sitting in a room with Chris Riegel, who's the CEO of Starin.biz, and we were going through the different names for the consultancy. And we had some great brainstorming going on, but then we just got on a tangent talking about James Bond. So if you remember, and this is where Chris said, "I got it," and so I said, "Okay, let's hear it." He said, "Remember when James Bond, he would come in and there's these guys in white coats, and they were always like messing around with all of this tactical, umbrellas that shoot bullets and things like that." I said, "Oh yeah, that was Q Branch." He's like, "Yeah, that was Q Branch, but then they changed it to Q Division." And that's what you guys are. You're the guys that you go to when you want to learn about the technology that's going to help you against your adversaries. And I'm like, boom, light bulb, and that was it. That's the name. So everything beyond that, I mean, when we originally did a lot of presentations when we did the early introductions where we had James Bond, the movie, playing all the clips from Q Division behind me when I would explain what the company does. It was awesome. But you can't do that too much without like having to pay the royalties and stuff like that. So yeah, that's how Q Division got named. We are that group. We are named. That's the namesake.
That is awesome. So there was truth behind the rumor of Q Division actually being formed.
It is true.
Spot. So I'll
That's
go
right.
with that.
And we still are. Yeah.
You got to get the white lab coat, and who comes out with the attaché with the cool gear that pops it open? It's like, this is what we have for you, Mr. Bond.
Exactly.
All right. So let's ask another kind of cool thing. For you personally, you are a person who is working on the experience. Have you ever walked into a store where you were like, damn, I didn't do this, but this is pretty cool? What would you define personally as a cool retail experience that you walked into and it kind of, were you ever blindsided by a cool experience that you were unexpecting?
Yes, absolutely. And you know about my sneaker fetish.
I was going to go there.
Yeah.
Let's go right there. Let's start
head.
with the cool experience.
Right. So the cool experience that happened to me, it happened twice, and it was Nike. Nike is always doing these experiments and things like that. So I was in LA, and part of travel for work all the time. So whenever I get a break, I try to find that sneaker place, the cool sneaker place with them in the city. And they had just opened their new store in LA. So I went, and you go in there and there is not really any kind of checkout or anything. It's more of like a store, and then you have to use your app to kind of experience things in this store. Like it wasn't a straightforward thing, but once I figured it out, you could use the Nike app, shop the look. They had different QR codes everywhere, but that wasn't what got me. Then I realized, I'm like, hey, there is this weird window in the back. So I walked outside the building, the store, and I saw a drive-through for sneaker pickup. blew my mind. You know why? Because you can never get parking in LA, ever. So what do they do? You
sneakers.
drive through sneaker at the store in LA. Unbelievably great idea. Because you basically you order online and you just drive up and then some guy comes out and puts it, and here you go. And that's cross innovation, right? That's taking from the QSRs, talking about how, QSRs, a huge segment of their revenue comes from drive-through. So why is it? Because it's convenient. People are used to having a drive-through. So why wouldn't you put it as part of a store? It just blew my mind.
Can
Yeah.
I have a moment of truth with you?
Yes.
It's rare that I go to a Dunkin' Donuts because I find I can get better coffee other places. But when I do go to a Dunkin' Donuts, I will not go into a Dunkin' Donuts that makes me make my own coffee.
Really?
Yeah, I will purposely go through a drive-through and wait in a drive-through because when I was drinking light and sweet, I wanted them to give me light and sweet. Don't ask me to do it because I'll never know the exact. It was a consistency. What is nice is that you're replicating this. I can get the same light and sweet in every Dunkin' Donuts I went to.
Yeah.
The minute you gave me a cup and told me to replicate it, I stopped. Since they wouldn't do it inside, they were like, well, just grab a cup of coffee. Here's your cup of coffee. Like they weren't trained to do it. I said, you know what? I'm just going to keep going through your drive-through. Not just for convenience, but because I wanted my coffee made by you. I guess that is kind of convenient. Right. But anyway, so that's my
But it is convenient. You're right.
So the Nike drive-through impressed you. That is so cool because I was betting on some laser light show, something that popped out that got you by surprise. But
well, here's another one. I didn't
totally
finish. I'll tell you the other.
Well,
that's the surprise and delight part. It doesn't always have to be based on technology, right?
Yeah.
But the second one is also a Nike experience. The new store they opened in last year on Fifth Avenue, right? Mm-hmm. The 5-story tall, amazing building. They had two things that blew my mind. They had you could sign up and customize your own shoe, right? Which, I get they have that in Converse stores and everything, but they had sneaker designers there that would help you design the shoe. Like people that actually knew what shoe design was all about. Like that blew my mind. Like you had this connection with the brand that was just unbelievable. I felt like, if Michael Jordan was there, I would have been like, oh, wow. But that entire store is designed around that. They had the bespoke clothing area. Like every floor in that store appeals to sneakerheads like me. And that was amazing. And then again, they had shop with the app, right? They had places. There wasn't like one checkout. You could check out any place, anytime. You could shop with the look. And then in the end, the most amazing thing, now here's the technical part. I walked by, they have this giant, it looks like an antenna in the middle of the store. It goes down the center of the store. They don't say anything, but if you walk underneath it, there's directional sound that beams into your ears. And it's surprising because you don't expect it, but it's like somebody's whispering in your head. Like
that's awesome.
It's like Nike is beaming thoughts into my head. So I thought, wow, that is amazing. So to me, that was it. That's all it takes for me. Surprise.
Well, that's awesome, man. That's great that you were actually surprised. Like at this point, if you work in that sort of stuff, similar to myself in the day-to-day AV world, I'm going to walk into places. It's rare that I'm going to be, wow, that's awesome, because right away something's going to kind of, I will get very granular. Like, that's great video wall, but that bottom right panel is kind of green.
Yep.
Yeah. So my experience I get very hypercritical really quickly. It's tough to be impressed when it comes to the technical, but you're right. I think I've walked into places that I was super surprised, more so by the little thing that I wasn't expecting. I guess that's the question I went for, and you answered it solidly, man. That's great. So tell me about, now that you kind of went down that road and gave us a preview, tell me about being a soul collector. And please do not, people that are watching this, he is not a Grim Reaper. It's a SOLE collector. Tell me about being a collector of sneakers, because I am a destroyer of sneakers, but not a collector per se, but I can understand where you're going to go and the places you're going to talk about. So please go ahead and tell me about being an avid shoe collector.
Well, I think the story really comes down to, I think technology has changed the way we, as sneakerheads, as we say, shop for sneakers, right? So I'll wrap it into this story about technology.
Yep.
In the old days, and you and I were just talking about it before the show, in the old days, you would have to know a guy. I know a guy that knows a guy that knows when these specific ones are dropping, and then you would call him and he would get it for you, you'd hold it in the back, and you'd slip him, a 20 or a 50 and say, thanks a lot. That doesn't happen anymore. And you'd have to travel to places to get these special editions and collaborations and things like that. So what has happened is the internet came along, and suddenly you could buy from wherever you were, and you could also do things to increase your chances, because even on the internet, there's a limited quantity. You just have to hitting the site until you get the order through, right? It's the same way. It's like
it's the old
days you'd wait in line.
It's like the old concert.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. And that's exactly the right metaphor. So suddenly technology has changed this game. Super cool. So now they have ways to cheat the system, which of course it's interesting to me because I'm in technology. So now you can do things like get a VPN and get a server that's closer to the e-commerce server that's serving up the orders, because every second counts. It's a lot like finance, where the shorter the distance or the faster the connection, you get that purchase. Yeah. It's the same technology. So now all of this technology, so of course it's an arms race. So I like to play this game where I'm like getting a bot that's going to hit the site over and over again really, really fast. Like I try to cheat the system when the limited editions come out. And then there's also ways, of course, using the app itself where they do these raffles and you just get on there. But I've been collecting for 10 years. And the difference between you and I is collectors don't always wear all their shoes. The moment you wear them, then it kills the value and you can't resell them. So it's a lot like stocks, right? So I have about, I'd say 250 pairs in the house, which my wife has already said to me is like, okay, now you have a new rule, 1 in, 1 out. I can't get any new stuff unless I either put it into my storage area or I sell it. So I have a limitation on capacity at home right now. But I am a big Adidas fan, and that's not only because Adidas is a client, it's all just because, if you think about, when you think about sneakers, remember the old school Superstar?
Oh, absolutely.
Brand? That's like with the shell toe, that is the classic shoe. And those were really where I focused my collection. So anything, and I tend to go more retro than the newer design stuff. So I'm all about that. And you also sent me some really cool things. I bought the last one, which I think was the Roland Puma ones, which were special edition, that's designed around how the app looks. It was awesome. And I still have that. And I haven't worn that yet.
I know you're a fan, so obviously if something pops up, I'm like, make sure Manolo gets this on his radar.
See, you're my guy.
I could be that guy. You never know. But the 808 was pretty cool because they had the two different versions of it. And I know a gentleman who also I follow on Instagram, who's an AV tech head. Next thing I know, he popped up with a similar pair, so he got the Puma. Ironically, for people that don't know, Puma and Adidas, since Manolo is an Adidas guy, have this long-standing rivalry. It's been from the dawn of time, apparently. Great story, and there's actually books on the sneaker game if you guys want to dig in, and maybe I'll put a couple down here. Friends of mine that are in the sneaker game a little differently. They're not the collectors, they're the flippers. These are guys that have been very entrepreneurial since they were young. They would go stay outside of the stores as they arrived, and they would pick apart the size 9s and size 10s before anybody else did, because those were the two more popular sizes, and then bring them out and double their price right away. So yes, ladies and gentlemen, this is a technology-based podcast where we're telling you how to cheat the system and how to pick up swag sneakers. So
that's technology. So
with using technology to get your swag on. That's awesome.
That's right.
All right. So the last question I have, because we're kind of running out on time, you also have the coolest name for a pup that you rescued.
Oh, my dog, yes. FN2187, yes.
Absolutely. As another connection point that I guess me and Manolo have is that we have a love for the lightsaber, and in this case,
yes, we do.
Finn is actually a big part of your Instagram. And if you don't know Manolo on an Instagram story, connect with him there and you'll see some interesting stuff, including his travels. This may be the only podcast, and maybe I'll put a stamp on it and not talk food, because every other podcast I've done, I've got into a food conversation. So let's make it unique and not go there. But if you do want to see some amazing sushi pictures, dude, do you have like a sushi app on your phone of where to go and get sushi in every corner of this earth at this point?
Well, I have to admit, I'm Asian, so it's genetic. We just know. We just know where to go. it's inbred. So that's right.
Okay, so if you haven't pictured it, he steps off the plane and he's like, okay, it's over there.
Yes, it's kind of like the Force. You feel it. You know, like that's where it is. Must go.
So Finn is a rescue pup that you picked up and brought him
Yes.
home. Is there a story behind him?
There is a story. My wife is really big into the rescue pups. We actually foster a lot of dogs continually. So, and of course, the puppies are the big ones. And it's nice because you get to have the puppies and not have to like have them too long. We have them 3 weeks, 4 weeks at a time. But we call Finn the foster fail because he just became the one we love so much. And so he is the best dog, of course. I think everybody thinks their dog is the best, but I know Finn is the best. He lets me put costumes on him. He sits in my office all day long in a chair. I mean, if you look at my Instagram, he sits actually in a chair across from me like he's working with me. Doesn't leave my side when I'm at home. And he's great, he's a good sport. When I put cameras on him all the time, like a dog's eye view. I put a GoPro on him, on different ones, and he just doesn't care. He lets me use him as a test case on a lot of things.
and you do play with a lot of technology. So if you are a manufacturer listening to this show,
Yes.
you want to dog proof your tech, he's your guy. He figures out ways to strap cameras to dogs and gives you the dog's perspective and the dog review. Well, Manolo, I appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to meet with us from, obviously from shopping and from running weird bots that get you cool sneakers. When you're not doing that, where can people find you when you're obviously not buying sneakers? Where can people find you on the internet?
On the internet, I am at Manolo_Almagro on Twitter. On Instagram, it's Manolo A. And what else? Facebook, you can find me. I'm under Manolo, of course, Manolo Almagro. And LinkedIn, Manolo Almagro. I use my full name online. So if you just Google Manolo, you'll get a tennis guy and then you'll get me. So if you can just Google Manolo and you'll find me easily. But yeah, and I think if I could do one plug, I'm going to be speaking at Aviation Festival next week in London about next generation chatbots. And then I'm talking at P2P, which is the Path to Purchase Expo in October on hacking retail. So if you go, come up and say hi. That would be awesome to see you.
Awesome.
And thank you so much for having me on the show. That was awesome.
Hey man, it was a good time. I told you it was not going to be anything difficult. It was more about finding about you and your cool shopping experiences than anything else. Honestly, after the show, maybe we'll talk. I got an idea for something that we could do together that'd be very interesting. Taking my nerdy ass out with you and doing some stuff, but we'll see. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to thank Manolo for being a good sport, coming on the show and telling us about some cool things on the retail side. Like I said, if there's anything or anybody that would know about the retail world and the retail tech side, he is probably one of the better examples out there. So connect with him online. My name is Chris Netto. You can find me at Chris_Netto right here on this lower third. Similar to Manolo, if you Google my name, it will be me and an Australian singer-songwriter of the same name. Not many Chris Nettos out there, but I do know we'd look nothing apart. What's up, Chris? How you doing? Anyway, you can find more about me at Twitter, Chris_Netto. I'm on LinkedIn. The sponsor of the show, Starin, is the company I work for. They're right here too, and that's Starin.biz. That's the website. Synergy-center.com is where we have the Rebels and Flux podcasts located. You can find that there as well. I just want to say thanks again to Manolo for taking the time and hanging out with us. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been Rebels and Flux. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching. This has been Rebels and Flux.